Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Boy, we got a great variety of guests on the show today, but I'm especially honored to have with us today Dr. Michael George. He's an author and a nationally recognized motivational speaker. He holds his doctorate degree in theology from Andersonville Theological Seminary, which is no easy task. And he's a member of the board of directors of Freedom Congress. And Dr. George, what an honor to have you, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much.
Well, you've written an interesting book, to say the least, and we want to get into this, America's Everyday Patriots. And what moved you down this track?
Well, the book, of course, is titled My Story of America,
right.
Inspirational Stories of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. And it really came about from people I met when I was traveling the nation speaking. I realized that there are just ordinary citizens among us that have great life stories, extraordinary stories, that all really tie into life and liberty and faith and freedom.
You know, just kind of building off that theme just for a minute, Dr. George, it appears to me, even in the shadow of the chaos that we're living and seeing what happened in Congress or didn't happen in Congress last night, I've often said, you know what? The soul of America is still good. The systems are broken.
You know, it's very true. It's funny because I am actually in Washington, D.C. today. And
the lights are on.
Yeah. Last night I was down at the Capitol, and we were doing some filming for a documentary that's being done, and I'm retelling the story of the national anthem, and crowds began to gather around as they heard the story of Francis Scott Key and the bombing of Fort McHenry, and when I get to the part where I'm sharing about, you know, the rocket's red glare and the bombs bursting in air, you can see tears running down people's eyes. And when people remember the stories of America, it makes a tremendous impact on their lives. And that's really how the book came about, is I wanted people to know the stories of America. Ordinary stories, extraordinary stories.
Why do you think these things are forgotten? Why do you think we have somehow just skipped over them and thought we could do without them?
I don't know if it's a direct, some part of that people want to make a change fundamentally in how the nation is set up, or if people just get apathetic or lazy at times. I think that can happen as well. Because there's a period of my life where I really was not interested in some of the stories of America, and I realized that our history is rich. But not only is our history rich, but the people that are around us, who live around us, they have rich histories. For example, one of the gentlemen I interviewed in the book, he grew up in communist East Germany. In fact, he was a communist. But when he left the Communist Party, he began to be followed by the secret police, the Stasi. They began to monitor his phone calls, read all of his mail. In fact, in one portion of the book, he tells about holding onto his wife and his 2 children, trying to pull them into the embassy as the communist officials are trying to rip the kids out of his arms. But he comes here and says that this is the land of liberty and freedom, and if we lose it, where else in the world can you go? Wow.
Well, let's get into some of these stories. Of course, you just shared one. Where did you find them?
You know, I found them simply by asking people, hey, do you know of anyone that has an interesting story? And someone would say, yes, I know of somebody, and I would interview them, and that's how it came about.
Well, let's get into them. I'm sure you're loaded with favorites, but let's talk about maybe the Vietnam vet whose life was changed by the unshakable faith of his children that were threatened.
Well, the first story in the book is a gentleman that grew up in a very, very difficult home life. His father was a German atheist. His mother was a spiritualist from an Indian reservation, and she used to carry around a little bag of chicken bones that she would roll and try and tell the future. At age 7, him and his older brother was getting beat up by their oldest brother, and they actually pulled a shotgun off the mantle and shot their older brother in the legs. He lived, but this is the home life that the man grew up in. His life changed when he went to Vietnam. When he was walking through the jungles one day in a monsoon in Vietnam, he steps in a bombed out building, and over in the corner he finds a Gideon's New Testament. He picks that up, puts it in his pocket, takes it back to his grass hut and begins to read, as he said, all the way to Psalms 28, because that's the way he thought it was pronounced. But he eventually becomes a missionary that goes behind the Iron Curtain. And the stories that he shares about kids whose fathers were taken away because they preached the gospel is quite incredible. In fact, one boy was asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And the boy said, I want to be a preacher just like my daddy. And he said, do you realize that if you do that, you'll end up in prison? And the little boy said this. He said, I know that the heroes in the Western world are men that play with little rubber balls like basketballs and footballs. Mm. But my heroes are Joshua at Jericho, Moses at the Red Sea. But most importantly, my hero is my daddy. And if it means going to jail like he did, so be it.
Wow. Now, there's obviously, in your stories, there is the element of faith and how it changes and motivates people. And that has to be incredibly inspiring.
It really is. And I tell people all the time, the book is a combination of faith plus freedom equals liberty. I was sitting this morning at the Family Research Council with General Jerry Boykin, who endorsed the book. And we were just talking a little bit about it. And I said, that's what makes up America, where you can openly have faith and you can openly have freedom, then you have liberty. When you strip those things out, you lose your liberty. And every story in the book ties around that. Every person, every individual. The great thing about the book, Perry, is that all demographics are really covered. I mean, there's stories of immigrants. There's stories of people that were born here. There's all colors of the rainbow. It's really a great picture of America.
How has this changed you in your thinking and in your walk, Michael?
I can tell you, sitting in front of those people and listening to their stories made me realize the hidden heroes and patriots that walk among us. It's interesting. The book starts with a Vietnam veteran and it ends with one as well. And this gentleman, I asked him, I said, what did you learn in Vietnam? And he said, well, I learned this more than anything. He said, we went there as strangers. We had our different denominational backgrounds. We had our different prejudices, but we left there as brothers. We came as Texans, New Yorkers, and West Virginians, but we came back just as Americans. And that really struck me at the thought of, when this country was founded, you had all the different colonies that were fighting for what they wanted. At a core, they came together and said, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, which are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I met people that really live and believe that's what America should be.
It appears that there are, and I want you to highlight some more stories here in a minute, but it appears there are stories like this by the thousands out there. But what's alarming to me is that there seems to be a movement in this country to take away religious freedoms, which in turn would take away the liberty and the freedom that we so enjoy. Why don't you think we hear these voices louder than we do today?
It's kind of the bully pulpit. You're aware that celebrities, news media, politicians, they're only a small percentage of what make up America. But yet, that kind of control, you can really, dictate and move and get people to believe that this is the norm. It reminds me of the story of Sonia in the book. Sonia was a girl that grew up in Nuremberg, Germany, Nazi Germany. And at age 10, she was required to become a member of the Hitler Youth. Even though her parents weren't Nazis, she had to be, because that's what the requirement was. And the Nazis did a very good job of separating the children from their parents in the educational environment. So Sonia was brought up to believe that Hitler was the savior. That's what they were teaching them. They taught these children to sing songs of praise to him, that he would help them, he would fight for them, he would be the person that they always needed to look to, and that their parents, you know, they needed to report them if they weren't following Hitler. So when Sonia got older, her father really, you know, took a chance and pulled her aside, and he began to explain to her what Adolf Hitler was doing to the Jews and to the people, and she was devastated. So when she actually finds out the truth, and she wants to leave the Hitler Youth, but she can't, and her story is so compelling, and it really makes you realize what happens when people constantly are fed a propaganda. She told me that, you know, they were, you know, Hitler and them always said, you know, give us the children and we will change the world. You know, we don't need the parents, just give us the children. And so it's something that we need to realize as we go about our day. You know, what are we sharing with our children? What are we making sure, you know, they're influenced by?
Where's Sonia today?
Sonia actually lives in Cincinnati, Ohio. She came to America, became a citizen, and what's interesting, she's a dear woman. She will tell you, I'm 150% American. I'm hyphenated nothing. I'm not German hyphenated American. I'm just American. She loves that she's from Germany, but the fact what I really love is she says, we're just Americans. That's what we are. We're not hyphenated something. We're Americans. So I think it's very interesting that how she sees it.
Let me take a quick break here. Dr. George will be back with Dr. Michael George and the book authored that he's authored, My Story of America, Inspirational Stories of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. There's a picture of it on the screen for those watching on the Dove TV. Check it out at Barnes & Noble or online at Amazon. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paulina and I work at the Dove TV. Did you know that when you support the Dove TV, you have a profound impact, not only in our community, but around the world? It's your continued support that takes the inspiration and hope in the programs we produce and makes them available to the thousands of people who are watching these videos online every week. Help bring encouragement and hope to our valley and beyond by making a secure online donation today at our website, thedove.us.
Anyway, Dr. Michael George is back with us today, and he's the author of a great book called My Story of America, Inspirational Stories of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. There's a picture up there on the screen, and let me encourage you to check it out with Barnes & Noble online at Amazon. Dr. George, you know, a couple things here. I understand that you use lyrics from the Star-Spangled Banners as chapter themes?
Absolutely, and it's really, the book's going to be one of two books, but I use that in particular because behind everything, there's a great story. Even behind the Star-Spangled Banner, there is a great story. I got to travel this summer to your great state of Oregon. It had been my first trip out there. And I was actually in Salem at the Salem Volcanoes baseball game over the 4th of July. And they had invited me out to speak. And right before the first pitch was thrown, I came out to home plate and retold the story of the national anthem before thousands of people sitting there in the stands. And you could watch people just get it. They remembered the story, or maybe they didn't know the story, but you could watch the tears run down their eyes as I tell about the bombing of Fort McHenry, and when that morning comes and Francis Scott Key looks out and he sees the flag still flying over the ramparts. It's a powerful story, and it has an impact, and that's what led to the writing of the national anthem. The people in the book, their stories have an impact, and it's one of those things I get asked all the time. Why? What can I do? What can I do to help keep America a land of freedom, a land of liberty? And I thought about that, and it was really one of the reasons I wrote the book. I wanted to be able to have something that people could share with their friends, their neighbors. It's a great witnessing tool. It's one of those things that you can give as a gift, like this holiday season, that people will thank you for and say, where else can I get this? It's just that powerful. The stories are that powerful.
Well, you've tapped into something that is very impacting, and that is storytelling. And you know, Jesus did it, and I think today, if more and more people The best thing I've heard is said, you need to go through the heart to get to the head. If you go through the head, you'll never get to the heart. But you need to go through the heart with a story, an emotional connection. That opens up the brain to receive the truths that you're trying to communicate. Also in there, you talk about the first American Christians and their fight for religious freedom. Tell us about that.
Not sure where you're referencing in the book.
But in general, excuse me.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Well, really, what we've got is this. You've got stories in the book of people that, you know, all throughout the book, I weave through little bits and pieces of people that fought for America in the beginning. Stories of, you know, for example, John Adams in there tells about how, you know, liberty once lost is lost forever. There's quotes in there from our founders, bits and pieces throughout the entire book. But it's one of those things where you're right. You have to go through the heart to get to the mind. You know, when you've sat in a church service at any time in your life and you've watched people, you see them, you know, maybe kind of go in and out as the facts and the figures are delivered. But as soon as they start delivering a story, start telling a story, everybody perks up and they listen. And they walk out of that church remembering that story. And I wanted to intertwine some of the stories of America, bits and pieces, into the stories of the book.
Well, give us a couple more. We got a few moments here. I don't know where to go. You got so many of them. But do you have a favorite?
Probably one of my favorites would be the story of Anna. Anna was a young girl that grew up in Cuba. And she tells what it was like just to live there and about her daddy and who she really loves. And then when the communist revolution took over, she tells how their life totally changed. She tells about how they ended up having to flee the country. And there's stories in there about how her father had to secretly get out of the country. They left there with just the clothes on their back. And they came to America. And she tells stories about, you know, doctors and lawyers fleeing that land and coming here and waiting tables and working, you know, as janitors so they could learn the language to become American citizens. And the thing I like is she just shares about how she got an opportunity. And even though she misses her homeland, what use is there to live in a place where you have no freedom, you have no liberty? We should never take that for granted. We should fight for that. We should be willing to stand up for that. And that's what encourages me. There are people out there willing to do that. And that's why I want to spread it. I mean, that's why I wrote the book. It's a great thing to get and give to people to share liberty.
All right. What about the World War II veteran who was awarded the Medal of Honor? Tell us that one.
This gentleman, Woody, it's interesting. He grew up in the backwoods of West Virginia, where I'm from, actually. And he ends up fighting at Iwo Jima in World War II. Originally, Woody couldn't even get into the Marines because he was too short. He was only 5'6", and it wasn't until in 1943 when they lowered the requirements that he could even get into the Marines. But he actually believed that he was going to stand on the coast of California with a rifle and dare them to try and come take our nation. That's what he believed. When they told him, no, you're going to the Pacific, he was like, what's the Pacific? I'm not sure what you're talking about. So, but his story is very compelling because he tells about, you know, here he had to kill people that he never had ever met before, that had really never done anything to him personally. And he struggled with that for some time. And he really shares about what happened in his life to give him peace, to get him past this, you know, these episodes of PTSD. It is a compelling story that will help. If you have a veteran in your life that has struggled with things, this is a great story to get and share with them.
All right, and you also have a story in there about a couple of criminals.
Yes, two gentlemen I met, they're actually from Texas. They grew up in two different parts of the country. The one gentleman, he grew up, and it'd be hard to call them gentlemen at that time in life. They certainly are now. But when they first grew up, the one was a drug user and became a drug dealer by the age of 15.
Wow. The
other one had lived a good life, but when he got into college, he got going the wrong way, and he ended up stealing $230,000. So you have a thief and a drug dealer meeting up in federal prison, both with long sentences. And through just nothing else you could say but the providence of God, they meet, their lives get changed, they end up getting out. They have a music group where they tour the nation today, you know, sharing their story with others and telling people about the dangers of what they got into. It's a great story of second chance, a story of grace.
Wow. Well, Michael, you say you got another one coming out?
We are working. This one has only been out about 3.5, maybe 4 weeks. And if you, like you said, you mentioned the chapter titles. This one ends, or the ramparts we lost were so gallantly streaming. Wow. So the next book will pick up, the chapter will be And the Rocket's Red Glare. So I'm interviewing people right now who have some interesting stories. There's actually a place where people can go to the website, mystoryofamerica.com, and send me a message and say, hey, I might have an interesting story you might be interested in.
All right, so I was going to ask you that. Are you looking for stories? So they can go to mystoryofamerica.com.
mystoryofamerica.com.
Okay, and kind of send you their little brief, huh?
Absolutely. Then we can go from there.
Well, boy, you got some great material to preach from. You know.
Well, there should be several preachers that could get it and use it. I'll tell you what. I was in a church this past weekend sharing some stories, and you will be amazed at how God moves through the stories of people's lives. The great thing is, and I had a woman tell me this weekend, she said, I'm buying 5 of these books because there are 5 people that I want to witness to, that these stories will witness to them in a way that I'll never be able to. That's powerful.
Has it reassured your faith in America, getting these kind of stories?
Absolutely. When you get down to the everyday citizen and make this country what they are, it does assure me. It does reassure me. And we just have to get people motivated and inspired to be willing to, you know, take the fight where we need to.
Well, Dr. George, thank you for your time. It's fascinating, and I look forward to getting you back, especially when your second edition comes out. But let me encourage you to check it out. You may, like he said, this would make a terrific Christmas gift, and it's called My Stories of America, Inspirational Stories of Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness by Dr. Michael T. George. And you may want to get a copy of that at Amazon or online at Amazon or at Barnes & Noble. Thank you, Dr. George. Keep up the good work. We'll have you back soon.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right. God bless. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Daniel and I work at theDove TV. You know, compared to Portland, Seattle, and LA, Medford might be considered a small market, but at theDove, we're excited about the opportunity to make a big impact right here in our community. And you help make that happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us now by making a secure online donation at our website, theDove.us, or by phoning 541-776-5368.
Well, you want to go to college? Maybe your kids want to go to college. Are you thinking about your kids going to college? You say, well, Perry, here it is October 1st. Why are we talking about college? Well, it's never too early to talk about this subject. And I'm delighted to have back with us today Cori Murphy. And she's a college planning specialist with My College Authority Incorporated. And it's also the name of her website, mycollegeauthority.com, which becomes a great resource. Cori, I'm fascinated by this topic because there's so much to be said about students wanting to go, can they afford to go, should they go, and all of that. So what is it you do?
Exactly. We work with the family, and there's 2 tracks. On the academic side, like you mentioned, what are we going to study? What job do we want? How much money are we going to make? What do we major in to get into that field? And there's all of that. And then the other side of it with the parents is, what kind of financial aid can we go after? Scholarships, grants, discounts. How much can we contribute from our income? Do we have any saved? Are we going to have to loan it? How much and which loans? And there's, exactly, and there's, 6 different buckets to pull from and 100 different ways to get our kids through. So that's really what we do, is work with the family to tackle both sides so that the students end up at the right college that they're going to be successful at and that the family can afford.
When's the proper time to start thinking about this for the student?
Ideally, in the junior year is when the work really starts to begin. It can happen later. I will still take on seniors now and working with seniors. It's just a compressed schedule. So it's never too late. You know, they're going to graduate from high school in the spring, and they're going to want to go to college, so it's never too late, but the sooner the better, because there is a lot to think about.
How risky is it? Because we know, myself, probably you, we start off on one path and we end up on another one, and that could be kind of tricky.
Not that uncommon, really. And now there's so many different avenues to pursue to get to the same career field. 4 or 5 different things they can study. So they may change their mind, and as they get to college and learn new things and be exposed to different things, they get excited about different opportunities. So that's okay. The trick is to not be in a position where we have to change schools to pursue a different angle. We want to be able to stay at the same school and stay on track.
All right, before we get too far down the track here, a couple things. Again, mycollegeauthority.com. That's Cori's website, and you may want to check that out, mycollegeauthority.com. You have a couple events. Tell us about those.
We have a couple events coming up this month. Our usual college planning workshop will happen on the 30th at Rogue Federal, and that's the last one for the fall. That is everything from A to Z that a family needs to know and should know. So very good overview. And then another event we have twice this month, and it's on our website, is an SAT/ACT diagnostic. And typically students are stronger on one test versus the other, and colleges don't care which one you take, they just want your better score. So now, instead of having to go and take both and have your scores out there, the students can do this type of diagnostic, keep those scores with them, not release them, and see which way's their better way to go.
Well, I was going to ask you that, because there is a way you can score higher?
Certainly, yeah. It's like learning to take a test is really what it is. And they're very different format, they're different timing. Students learn differently and process information differently. So whichever one's their stronger test, that's the one to go for and do well on.
Well, back when, but boy, you sit in this room all day taking this test and your brain's fried and you're scared to death. You don't know what you've done to your future, you know. So how's that played out today?
Well, it's played out today with the confidence of the diagnostic, the confidence of prepping for that test, and then you take it twice, because that first experience, you are in there and you're talking to yourself, and that inner critic is just going crazy. So get one out of the way. And
inner critic, I like that. Inner critic. I watch some students throw up their hands and get up and walk out. You know, it's frustrating, but you help them with that, prepare for that. The other question, are students interested in college these days?
They really are. They know that it's part of their future. They see where their friends and their families are at and what life is like at home, and they want something bigger. They're dreamers. They want to have fun, and they want to spend time with their family, and they know that they have to work to do that. So they really do, and they understand college is that next step.
Do you help them to determine whether or not they should go on to maybe a community college before they go to a university?
Absolutely.
Is that part of the analyzation?
It is. There's a direct path from high school to university, and then there are those indirect paths. And jumping full bore into college isn't for everybody. Maybe the family budget can't support a full 4 years at a school. So however they need to get there, if they stay at home and go to SOU, it's a great school, and then transfer. Or maybe it's just a 2-year degree. So we do help with all that.
All right, I'm reading more and more about, we'll call them the millennials. I'm sure you're aware of that bunch.
The Gen Yers, the millennials.
There you go, yeah. They're afraid of the debt. They're afraid of coming out of school. They may have an education. There's no guarantee that that field is going to hire them, and they're strapped with the debt, so they thought, why bother? What do you do to help overcome that fear?
You know, I praise them for being conscientious of that, and that because it is a college education, it is an investment, there is value to that, but not if we're going to spend too much money and not make enough on the other side to pay that debt back. So I really praise them on that. And they're working during the summer, they're working during school, they're exhausting all scholarship and financial aid opportunities. We see the extended families helping kids as well, aunts and uncles, grandparents, everybody's chipping in.
Well, we know financial aid that comes in many forms.
Yes.
And it's available. And there's maybe some misconceptions about it as to whether or not it's available or not available. Today, you know, we got the government shut down, which I think is kind of nice. You know, it's kind of quiet out there. But does it come with a lot of strings attached?
Not typically. The strings are that you maintain full-time enrollment, you stay at the school that has awarded it to you, and you maintain a minimum GPA. The myths are, and where the confusion is everyone's focused on those local private scholarships that are put in front of them, and those are great. The Rotary, the Seroptimist, the others, those are great, but that's not where the big money is. The big money is in the college's own pockets, and they're giving it to the kids that they want to give it to. And so we have that data and we have that information, and so it's about matching those kids up.
There you go. There's your resource. All right. mycollegeauthority.com, and you can talk to Cori there, and it's never too soon to start this conversation, at least start it while your students are juniors in high school. But there are a couple events. Highlight those again so
yes.
people can come to them.
October 30th is our just general workshop, everything families need to know, and that will be at Rogue Federal Credit Union. And then the diagnostic testing, really for sophomores or juniors, is on the 5th, this Saturday, and then on the 17th, which is a no-school day for Cascade.
And where do they get it from? At the website?
On the website, it's all there.
Okay, My College Authority. There you go, mycollegeauthority.com. Anything I'm missing on this? Because it's fascinating. And again, this is the beginning of a new school year. But hey, if you're a junior, plug in, right?
Right. Yeah. It's just big and it's complicated and things come up and it's complicated.
Well, what a tremendous resource for families, what you provide, Cori. So thank you so much. And again, let me just encourage you. It's never too early to think about this. It's mycollegeauthority.com, and on there you'll see these events. You may want to check them out. And then parents, if you're thinking about this for your children, Cori's a wonderful resource for you to get a hold of and get her plugged into your life. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Paula, and I work at theDove TV. Every day we get letters and emails from people who've been encouraged, blessed, and challenged by the programs on theDove TV. But we couldn't do it without you. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to bring inspiration and hope to our community by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us, or call us at 541-776-5368.
Well, we're back, and delighted to have with us now Trudy Beyak. She is author of a very interesting and fascinating book, The Mother Heart of God. And there's a picture up there on the Dove TV. Those watching on the Dove TV, you may want to check it out at Evangel or Christian Discount Books in Jacksonville or Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And she is a mom. She has 3 daughters, and she's a respected and award-winning investigative journalist, and gets around. And I just noticed before we got her on Skype, she sings and does exercises sitting in a chair. Were you singing?
I wasn't bad.
Well, I should take that part of the Skype and send it back to you. It was pretty cute. How are you, Trudy?
Great, thank you, Terry.
Oh, nice to see you. Well, listen, fascinating book. What led you down this path?
Well, I'm a devout Christian, and I generally, everything I read scriptures. I feel very weak without the Lord, so I spend time studying the Bible before I go to work. And just reading the Bible, and question just started swirling in my mind. What part of me corresponds to God? And I felt God calling me to interview leaders all over the world about this question.
Well, it's very timely, and the mother heart of God, they suggest that God's, well, it shouldn't suggest, but that deals with God's maternal love. I mean, it's an incredible thing. Tell us about it.
Yeah, as a journalist, you have to always put stories in context, you know, so you always try to write in balance and in context. So the context is that God is our Heavenly Father, and Jesus is the Son of God, the Savior of this world. And of course, so it's in that context that God is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. But there are also some beautiful metaphors in Isaiah and elsewhere in the scriptures that describe the comfort of God as a mother comforts a child. And it's those metaphors that are the focus of the book.
Well, you also interviewed a lot of people from different faith backgrounds that gave you this perspective. What, over 50?
Yes, that's right. I had no idea where I was going when I started. I just thought I would, as I do with a big news story, I just keep asking questions until I feel I've come to a satisfactory answer. So when I started, I had no idea. I was going to interview 50 different people, and they're from Catholic to Baptist to evangelical to Pentecostal, to, you know, just the whole gamut.
Well, you did. And what was the common in that?
Well, you know, one of the problems is that some people think this is divisive in Christianity, when in fact it's not. When I spoke to different people, different leaders of faith, I discovered a wonderful harmony. And I think that's what this book really brings, is a peaceful resolution to this, what can be a somewhat controversial question.
All right, repeat the question again.
Well, there were several questions, but one of them was, what part of me as a woman corresponds to God? And that got me into other questions in terms of, I'm a mother of 3 daughters. I'm a grandmother of 7. And women have this maternal instinct, you know, and it's a little different from what a man has. And so then I started asking the question, well, is there a maternal side to God? And that really started the ball rolling.
Well, you interviewed some incredible notables: Tony Campolo, Gary Chapman, Anne Graham Lotz. I'm just mentioning a few here. J.J. Packer, incredible theologian. And I mean, and the list goes on. Did anything jump out at you here?
You know what really jumped out to me, I don't know if it will to others, but for me, when I went to the Middle East and I interviewed Dr. Daniel Ayuch, he's an Orthodox scholar.
Right.
It really blew me away when he told me that, well, we know that God is a God of justice and a God of mercy. And what Dr. Daniel Ayuch explained to me is that in Hebrew, the word mercy is rahem, which actually means womb-like and sheltering and protective. So that just blew my socks off, you know. I thought, wow. I don't know if it does for you, but it really blew my socks off.
Wow. What did you get from Ravi Zacharias?
He was one of my favorites, I have to say, and I actually end the book with his interview. Dr. Ravi Zacharias is incredible, and we talked about the parable of the prodigal son and the father. You know, how he just envelopes that son who has walked away and has come back. And he talked about how women have this incredible feature of this maternal love, which is all encompassing. And so we finished the book with this wonderful balance of the paternal love of God and the maternal love of God. So we as men and women who are made in God's image, we reflect that love to others. Anyway, it's a little complicated, but I hope that's sort of.
What I'm also sensing you're trying to do here, which is really remarkable, Trudy, is to the Heavenly Father, which has a masculine overtone, obviously, and you're trying to figure out what is the maternal feminine side of that and how it applies to life and maybe even being a parent. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a very good way to sum it up. Yes.
Were you satisfied with what you found out?
I am incredibly satisfied. It is actually really, it's actually changed my life in many ways. The interesting thing, which I hadn't predicted, was that as I was going through this journey and interviewing all these leaders of faith all over the world, wrote the book, the big thing is that God is our Father, He's our Savior, and He's also our Comforter. And I went through some really tough experiences as well, in which I was able to put to practical use what I had learned about God. So in other words, I went through some experiences that were probably the toughest I've gone through in all my life, and learned to lean on God as my comforter. And so it became very practical to me. Yeah.
What did Lucy Swindoll tell you? Because she can get pretty wild.
Lucy's very cool. Basically, she explained that God is beyond gender, which also I agree with, by the way. Mm-hmm. It has to do with God's parenting nature, like His parental love. So this is not about gender per se, but it's about the different ways He expresses His love. At any rate, you asked about Lucy, and Lucy said that God is beyond gender, and then she explained why. And then she also explained how women are made in God's image. And yeah, she gave women some real practical pointers on why we should be very thankful that God created us to be women. And I think that's another aspect of the book. I have to say, too, I'm not a radical feminist at all. So I really try to make that clear right from the beginning so people get the idea that I'm actually very balanced. And being a journalist, you have to be very open-minded, and you also have to be very balanced.
Well, I think you've tackled a fascinating topic, especially with the amount of people that you interviewed to support your outcome. Shonda Pierce, did you get a straight answer from Shonda? She's a comedian, so she can be pretty hilarious.
She was great. She says, you know, who do you run to when you know, if you're a kid and you skin your knees, who do you run to? You run to your mother. Mm-hmm. And she just made that very practical. So again, thinking about that concept that God is our comforter. So Chanda had a great insight, I thought.
You know, some more, the ecumenical churches will put a lot of emphasis on Mary, the Mother of God, and they'll very respectfully, and yet other churches don't. But there is that connection there. She's a mother, she's a woman, and she's to be revered. Did you get anything out of that?
I do have a chapter in my book about Mary and Elizabeth, and about how the Holy Spirit really orchestrated, you know, the birth of Jesus Christ, and really was connected in terms of even when Elizabeth was carrying John the Baptist, how when Mary came into that room, mm-hmm. John the Baptist actually did a kick, you know, mm-hmm. in the womb. And so there is some fascinating connections between moms, babies, and the gift of the Holy Spirit.
So what do you want ladies to get from this?
Well, I'd really like them to know how wonderfully made they are in God's image, and to be just sharing that love with others, with their children, with their husband, you know, with their families, and with the world around. You know, what's fascinating, Perry, is that men really get this too. I have been very impressed by the way men have responded to this book. And that to me has almost been a bit of a surprise, because I knew women would be very excited about this book. But it's kind of been a really nice surprise to see how men really have as well.
Well, let me encourage you folks to check it out. It's called The Mother Heart of God, and again, there is a picture of it on the screen. And you may want to check it out at Evangel or Christian Discount Books there in Jacksonville, or go online, Amazon, or see if Barnes & Noble have it. You may want to pick a couple copies of it and share it with other people. Now, you're a mom and you're a grandmom. Has this changed you?
Yes, absolutely. I went, like I was telling you, I went through some really tough periods here, and I think it has definitely increased my faith. I have never felt closer to God than I have now. I'm really learning to use the discipline of meditation and prayer, thinking even about the law of God. You know, when I was telling you about that God is a God of mercy and a God of justice, I want to now explore more, you know, the God of justice. So it's just gotten me going in all kinds of different directions in terms of being closer to God.
You know, I was going to ask you that is a new book coming out of this.
Believe me, I'm not going to go all over the world and interview people all over the world again, because that, I think, is a once in a lifetime kind of thing. But there will be other books. They'll just be different.
Well, you're a delight, Trudy. I want to let you get back to your singing and calisthenics, and and let me encourage folks to check it out, The Mother of God, and you just, I think you'll find it to be a fascinating read. 50 people she's interviewed for this book, and I mean, some very incredible notables, and Anne Graham, if I start reading them, I'll leave a bunch out, so I won't do that, but you may want to check that out. Thank you, Trudy.
You're welcome.
Okay. Okay, you bet. And again, it's called The Mother Heart of God, and you may want to check it out at the bookstores or online. We'll see you next time on Focus Today.
Hi, I'm Jim and I work at theDove TV. Every weekday between 6 and 8 a.m., our award-winning news and sports team bring you the best morning show around. It's live, it's honest, and it's a whole lot of fun. And you help make it happen. Did you know that more than 90% of our income comes from people like you? You can help us continue to air local programs that share your voice by making a secure online donation at our website, thedove.us.